Gru and company get on so many crazy adventures, it's hard to fit them all in one movie. Let's look at some scenes that didn't quite make the cut in the Despicable Me franchise. Number 1. It's not surprising that this scene got cut from the final film. In an early trailer for the first Minions movie that didn't originally air in the United States but did air in France, a never-to-be-revealed leader was shown. It included a scene where the Minions are beginning to follow a medieval leader, who looks like some kind of a knight during the Dark Ages. The knight in question walks onto a balcony 2 of the Minions are currently washing, only to slip and fall on the improperly cleaned floor. Those mischievous Minions begin to laugh at their leader, thinking this is hilarious, until the knight's sword makes a return trip from up in the air, down from the heavens, where it finally finds itself inside the leader's chest. Yikes. And yes, that trailer was shown publicly on TV, and it was from a film designed for children. So, not much explanation for why it did not end up in the final film. We still think it's hilarious though. Number 2. You think our little yellow pals would have learned their lesson from following the T-Rex earlier in history. In this next deleted scene, our little Minions are sitting in what looks like a frozen over circus. We never have context as to why they are in this setting, but it appears that they are following, of all things, a seal at this time? Or maybe they were following a clown who perished due to something they did? Anyway, the Minions are far from thrilled with their current situation. In the trailer this scene appears in, the narrator states, "If this went on much longer, they'd surely perish." A concept which was best cut from the film, as this piece of information makes the Minions search for a leader based on survival. A weird introduction of mortality into what's meant as a lighthearted film. It's much funnier if the Minions just want a leader, you know? Number 3. Some people have more problems with their reflection than others. This deleted scene from the Minions film featured one of our Minion friends having some fun with a gaggle of mirrors. They become very entranced by their image, pressing their Minion butt against their reflection and dancing around. They dance all the way to a place where the mirror ends, but luckily, another Minion is there to replace them in the quote-unquote mirror. The Minion continues to dance around until the Minion pretending to be their reflection decides once they turn, they'll jump and scare the Minions out of them. Which they do. Not sure why this was cut out of the film. Maybe they were worried people would think the Minions were too mean? We already know they have a mean streak though. Number 4. What a little stinker that Edith is. In Despicable Me 3, when Edith and Agnes spend time away from the mansion together, Edith tells Agnes she really wants to go back to the mansion. Capturing more of Edith's mischievous side, not that she keeps that side very hidden, she wants to get back to the mansion as soon as possible because the butler Fritz is covered in itching powder that she planted in his underwear drawer. Then we are treated to a montage of poor Fritz having an agonizing day covered in some kind of itchy substance, using some egg beaters to soothe his itches, then using a bath scrubber and toothbrush to try and solve his problem, then crawling around on the top of a flight of stairs rubbing his back like a cat, leading him to accidentally fall down the stairs. While we're always ready for more pratfalls and physical comedy, maybe this scene got cut because this was taking Edith's pranking just a bit too far. Number 5. Seems like the filmmakers are not a big fan of surprises. In a deleted scene in Dru's mansion in Despicable Me 3, while the two brothers are wearing their spy costumes and examining one of Dru's many weapons, Lucy walks in pretty annoyed, believing they're going to both become villains. While this scene was deleted, a similar scene still makes it into the film. While Lucy walks by a window in Dru's mansion, she sees the brothers both boating off in their spy uniforms, looking quite annoyed. So really just a streamlined version of the original scene. Fair enough. Number 6. Do you know the lyrics for Karma Chameleon by Culture Club? Trey Parker, the voice actor for the villain of the film, Balthazar Bratt, sure does. Unfortunately, some of the songs Trey sang didn't make it into the final film. Trey Parker loves some improvised dialogue and singing songs, but most of what he sang for the film didn't make it into the final cut, including his rendition of the 80s song Karma Chameleon. There was a scene of Bratt fighting Gru while singing the song, which was eventually cut from the film. At the very least, Trey ended up singing Hug Me, written by Pharrell Williams, so he didn't miss out on those famous comedy pipes. Number 7. The cake was not the only thing to get cut during the dinner scene in Despicable Me 3. Originally, Dru and Gru goofed around a lot more before they had their family dinner than what ended up being in the final film. The brothers' banter was originally going to be over 3 minutes long, and the scene was even more complicated given the fact that Steve Carell voiced both characters. So in a heavy banter conversation, Steve would have had to play each character imitating the other character in a conversation between each character. Tough, right? While the scene got cut down, Carell still had many instances when these characters would be bantering with each other. So to make scenes like this easier, Carell recorded all of Gru's lines first, then recorded Dru's lines while hearing Gru's lines being played back to him. Still sounds pretty hard. Number 8. Children can be so cruel. In a deleted scene from Despicable Me 2, we get a peek into why Gru has such trouble making romantic connections. In a flashback scene, we see young little Gru with a flower attempting to speak to some girls during his childhood. Unfortunately, Gru gets bullied by the children, who evade him because they all say he has the Gruties, cooties that only come from Gru. We don't really need to say this, but this is a fictional disease, okay? If you were lucky enough to watch this film on Netflix, however, you still got to see this scene as it was added back in for the Netflix release. Number 9. Not the hair. Dru wasn't always going to look the way he looks in Despicable Me 3. Other looks they tried before deciding on this final look included him wearing a big fur coat with a sweater underneath to show a more laid-back version of Gru. But they went back to their original version of Dru when they thought that the design was much more clear and concise about his personality and what he was about. And we're grateful. Number 10. Well, maybe they're not as close as we thought. In an original script for the film, there was a scene where Dru punches Gru during an argument, leading to a more dramatic moment in the film. The producers didn't believe this was within his character as written, and a bit too dark, however, and couldn't salvage the idea, so it was later removed from the film. But based on Gru's prowess, we know this family can throw a punch. Number 11. Apparently this scene was just too graphic for audiences. In another scene which exists only in a trailer and not in the final film for the first Despicable Me movie, Vector's squid gun is not only heard to latch onto someone's face, but we also get to see someone running around aimlessly with the squid attached to them. While the squid is attached to the person's face, they just yell, "Ah, there's a squid on my face, ah!" You know, sort of like that. In the film, we only see it off screen while Vector and his dad react with some indifference. Which do you prefer? Number 12. Which is worse, being despicable or being evil? The original concept for the film franchise was to call it Evil Me, with more devilish designs and a potentially more dark protagonist. As previously discussed, the filmmakers were pretty worried about making the children's films too dark, so Gru must have been upgraded from evil to just plain despicable. But what could have been? Did you like this version of Gru, or would you have preferred an even eviler Gru? The film franchise is pretty great as it is. Would you have preferred Gru to be a little more evil? Let us know in the comments. Number 13. Lucy would have never put up with this many cuts had she known. Lucy had a lot more to do in older versions of Despicable Me 3. Originally, once the family arrived in Fredonia, Lucy was going to start fighting crime and become a vigilante. This would have worked well with the character we first met in Despicable Me 2, as she was all about the law and keeping it. In the cheese festival scene in Fredonia, there was a chase scene which would have Lucy chasing a robber who stole an old woman's purse. This would have been full of slapstick moments and cheese-based puns, if you're into that sort of thing. Lucy would have had to dodge a bunch of cheese-based statues falling down, and when she finally got the robber, she was gonna say, "This is Nacho Day." Nice. In the end, the writer said they wanted Lucy's role to have a more emotional payoff this time around, rather than having a distracting vigilante storyline. So they built up more of her having a relationship with Gru's children and being a stepmom, making her role much like Gru's in the first Despicable Me film. Number 14. The filmmakers didn't always know Brat was going to be enemy number 1 in Despicable Me 3. The original idea was for Brat to simply be a henchman for another bigger criminal, but the OG villain they had written just wasn't funny enough for a movie about a weird family and 889 small yellow marshmallow men. The producer of the film said Gru needs an adversary that's not only a worthy foe, but just as funny as Steve Carell. Gru is so fun and lively, if you put a straight man in front of him, they'll just disappear. Eventually, once they saw the design for Brat, they saw more potential than they first thought. So he got an upgrade from sidekick to full-on 80s villain who hates Hollywood. We get it. The filmmakers were truly despicable removing this content from the original films. Which scenes would you have liked to have seen in the movie? Let us know below. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching The Things Animated.